So for some of you, hopefully this was fairly straightforward. I'd love to have your attention up here, okay? For some of you, it may not have been, whether it was because you were here Friday but don't remember or weren't here Friday. So let's talk this through. Before we give it examples, can you tell me what the 4 spheres are? Because it's hard to answer that question without that. Give me one of them. Hydrosphere. Give me another one. Biosphere. Go. Geo. Go ahead, Sydney. Atmosphere. She was sitting quietly and had her hand up, so I was like, yeah. All right, so there's 4 spheres, and there's carbon in all of those spheres. There's absolutely carbon in all of those spheres. Give me an example of carbon in one of them. Who's got that? Who's got that? Go, Beth.
And the biosphere is in plants.
It's in plants, isn't it? Yeah. So again, if you don't have this written down, if you did not know the answer, now is the time to write it down. So it is present in plants. Is it present in other things in the biosphere? Yeah. And in animals? Yeah. And sometimes we forget about all those other living things, right? The fungi and the bacteria and all that stuff. There is carbon in pretty much all of that stuff. You know that they call life on Earth carbon-based life forms, right? Why do they do that? There's carbon in it, right? We need carbon for that all to happen. Yeah, they're carbon-based life forms. And today we'll go through like how it all kind of cycles through, but that's absolutely true. That's one. Give me another example in a different sphere. Pick a sphere, any sphere. Go, Elena.
Algae.
Algae in the hydrosphere. So I kind of agree with that, but the algae is actually living. It's actually part of the living ocean, right? Does that make sense? So it's kind of a mix because it lives in the water, which is kind of where you were thinking. Is that right? Yeah, but it's actually part of the biosphere. What in the hydrosphere has carbon in it? What's that? The water itself. Yeah. And it's kind of like a on the nose kind of question, but absolutely, yep. So the oceans, okay, and lakes and rivers and all that stuff. Yeah, we'll just say water. Jeez. The water contains dissolved carbon dioxide. I'm just going to remind myself of that. It has, remember, dissolved just means that it's mixed up so small that you can't really see it, but it's dissolved carbon dioxide. Okay. What you got?
In the atmosphere, like the gases.
Yeah, for sure. So the atmosphere is just the gases that are all around us, right? And within those gases, what is one of the big ones, friends? Carbon dioxide. Same deal. And in CO2, carbon dioxide, sorry, sometimes I forget to write this down. And if I ever do that and you're like, what is that thing? Then just ask, please, please, please. Carbon dioxide, the first part of carbon dioxide is carbon, right? Yeah. All right, got the hydrosphere, biosphere, atmosphere. Tell me about the geosphere. In the rocks. In the rocks, absolutely. Where do the rocks get their carbon from? Do you remember that part? Dead stuff. Yeah. The rocks get their carbon from dead animals and plants. And they turn that carbon into, does anybody know what they turn it into? Fossil fuels, yeah. Yay. All right. We good? Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we are going to play our game again. Going to remind you kind of how it worked. Everybody got an assigned role. I'm going to mix you up. So it doesn't matter if you remember your role from last time or not, or if you weren't here last time or not, it does not matter. Everybody, I would like for you to have a different role than you had before. So if you remember, then you're going to take something different. Does that make sense? And then you need to go to your respective spot. So let me, hold on just a second. I'm going to pause this. Boop. All right, friends. I want you to have a seat for a moment. I want to make some observations here. And I was kind of giving some people a hard time, and not in like a intentionally mean way, just in a like, let's make some observations sort of way. Why was I picking on you guys over there, Elena? Because you had one. Now remind me what you are. You're trees. And you weren't getting a lot of carbon, right? Now, raise your hand if you are a thing that can give carbon to trees. So it is just the atmosphere. And the atmosphere people are kind of lazy. So, I mean, part of that is like a human element of like, right? No judgment, except that they only have one like most of the time. All right. Who? I know, it's true. So we got to factor that in, but we also need to learn from it. Are there any other groups that had very, very little carbon or very little carbon transfer? Yeah. What were you guys? The algae. And who can give carbon to the algae? Just the water. And you were giving it to this, and you were showing some favoritism. Now, snails, you have a lot of carbon there. Now, I am kind of surprised, and I will tell you that when we did this on Friday, in the other class, the snails were also kind of struggling in terms of getting carbon. So I don't know if there was some favoritism happening between the snails and the, I don't know exactly how that was happening, but it sounds like both of these two pieces were kind of struggling to get carbon. Talk to me if you had a lot of carbon. You were like an overabundance of carbon. Colin, what part are you?
We're
Sediment and rock? And you were getting lots of carbon?
We were giving away lots of it too.
That's cool.
Yes.
Okay, so you had should I say a high flow?
We ended up with more than we got. So.
A high flow of carbon. Is that fair to say? I mean, because you were giving it up too, but you had to like keep going back and back and back. Whereas Elena, poor thing, and I'm not trying to leave you guys out, Jacob and Hayden, like you guys were just kind of waiting, right? Like, where's the carbon? All right. So raise your hand if you can give carbon to the rocks. Who can give carbon to the rocks?
Baby.
You guys should raise your hands too, right? Can't you give carbon to the rocks? There you go. So rock can get carbon from the trees, the caterpillars, the snails, and the algae. Okay. Anybody else have tons and tons of carbon, or at least a high flow of carbon?
We had a good big flow of carbon, but we kept getting it away.
You were just being efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah? Mostly not giving it to the trees, though.
No, I walked over there a couple times.
Good for you. I'm glad for you. So you're the atmosphere, is that right?
I was there the first time. I moved over there when they just walked past this way.
All right. So the atmosphere was also having a high flow. Raise your hand if you can give carbon to the atmosphere. Who can give it away to the atmosphere? So we've got, what is that? Trees and rocks and water. Okay. And caterpillars? Holy cow. How do caterpillars give carbon to the atmosphere?
That's what I'm. You were right. Sorry.
What's that called? It starts with an R.
Respiration.
Respiration. Yeah. All right. So I would like, really quickly, because we're going to do this one more time, but I would like for you to reset the carbon. Every group had 3 to start. So if you do not have 3, make it so you have 3. Make it happen.
No, we need more. You're good.
I was really wondering.
Oh, Def, you have.
No, we need more.
Oh, they needed 4. I'm sorry. Does everybody have 3 now?
Elena, I got you.
Oh, we need one. Hey.
We already have it.
Shut up.
I got you.
All right. Now, my friends, I have a question for you. The carbon cycle exists on the Earth, and it does, and hopefully, as we've gone through this couple of iterations, you've seen that it kind of sustains all of life, right? You got to have carbon, you got to give it away, and it just kind of happens, and then it's ebb and flow and all that good stuff. Now, there is one piece that we have not really thrown into this carbon cycle. Can anybody think of what that piece is? It's not the oxygen, because we're talking just about carbon movement. Is there something else that moves carbon besides what we have so far? What'd you say?
Humans.
The humans. Yes, indeed. Now, Elena, you were kind of handling the three of you don't really need to handle the trees, right? Does that make sense? Like, you can probably handle it all by yourself. So I am going to make Hayden and Jacob humans. You're turning. So when we were planning this, I don't know if you guys have watched Lord of the Rings and like seen like the tree people. That's what I'm imagining. So you're becoming human. So you're gonna come sit over here. No, you may not be a human. Where did my cards go?
Just dehumanize all.
All right. Now humans. So I can take your trees. We have a tree tag. Now, in order to turn into humans, I need to give you an update, or they're going to give you an update on what they see. So Jacob, can you read the very top of your card? What does it say?
Deep from the earth, within the rock and sediment, you discover another reserve of carbon in the form of coal, oil, and natural gas.
All right. So you got a little more carbon to deal with, right? So this is not carbon that the humans are producing themselves, but where is it coming from, Hayden? Where did that say that was coming from? From the earth, from deep down inside the earth. You have heard and you know that humans take advantage of all of this carbon that we've found underground, right? Coal, oil, natural gas. And what do we do with that coal, oil, and natural gas, which is, honestly, friends, pure carbon. Like, that's just a bunch of carbon from all of the dead plants and animals that have gone, right? So it turned into sediment, and some of that sediment's giving away carbon just in that direction, but a lot of it's deep down. And now these humans have found it. Okay. What do they do with that coal and oil and natural gas?
Use it as fuel.
They burn it. They use it as fuel and they burn it. And what happens to the carbon, guys? What do you think? Where's it going to go? It's going to go into the atmosphere. So they need to provide carbon to the atmosphere, okay? We're going to run this one more time. So if you're not human, if you're not playing a human, I should say, if your character is not human, then you need to continue doing your thing, just like you did last time. But now the humans are involved. You with me there? Okay. On your mark, get set, make it happen.
Let's go.
You got the atmosphere.
Interesting. So, was it the same or was it different? It was different. Can you tell me, give me some descriptions of how it was different when we added the humans and the human element and all of the coal that was in there? We'll start back here. Go ahead.
1/3 of our carbon is now carbon.
So 1/3 of, you guys are the sediment, right?
Yeah.
So the rocks, carbon, is that black carbon? Okay. All right. Other observations. Go ahead.
The trees got a lot more carbon, but we ended up with just one.
Okay. So the trees ended up with, got it a lot. So remind me where you can get your carbon from.
The atmosphere.
The atmosphere. So atmosphere, what did you find in this exercise?
We're getting a lot of carbon from like humans.
Yeah. So the atmosphere got a ton of carbon. So the atmosphere got lots of carbon. And so maybe because of that, and maybe also because I was, giving them a little bit of a hard time of not giving you carbon as efficiently last time, you got more carbon. And it was still enough to kind of sustain, but it wasn't as, maybe it wasn't still as much as like, oh my gosh. The ocean has a lot of carbon, or the water has a lot of carbon, I should say. That's amazing. So the trees, you still had just a little bit, right? Kind of like a little more, but not a lot more. Not tons more. Other observations. Algie, how did you do?
Number one.
You have your one.
Yep.
Now, was that kind of, did you find that it was still kind of slow for you, or it was?
Well, when water brought it in at big amounts.
Okay. Okay. But so it was kind of slow still, but not crazy slow. Now, water, tell me what happened to you guys.
Well, I thought we did a good job getting rid of it. It turns out it was
So that's okay, but here, this is interesting, you guys. I have a question. So you said, I thought I did a good job getting rid of it, and maybe like you were trying to be pretty efficient, but there was just a lot more carbon in the story, right? Now I have a question for you. The carbon that the humans kind of introduced, was that carbon new carbon? Was that carbon like brand new to the whole story?
I mean, like, it was in the earth.
It was different colors.
Say that again.
It was in the earth before.
It was in the earth before. So in terms of the cycling, we had new carbon, right? So maybe we could say like new carbon in the cycle, moving from place to place. But that's not like new carbon that didn't exist before, right? It's not like the humans created the carbon. In fact, the humans just used it. Now, Hayden, I have a question. If we had let this go another 2 minutes, tell me about your situation.
We wouldn't have any more carbon to give out.
You wouldn't have any more carbon to give out. What does that mean?
Humans are better.
No one's giving them.
Let's get more carbon.
No, but yeah. So where are you going to get that more carbon? Gotta keep digging, right? Now, can I just keep giving you carbon? Like, is there an infinite supply of that carbon somewhere?
I don't think so.
No. Do you see where this is going, you guys?
We're screwed.
Yeah. So instead of using all of that deep down in the earth carbon, we're looking for other things that we need to use so that you guys don't run out, right? Now, technically, like as humans, as an animal, you would get a little bit of carbon, but that's the carbon to keep you alive. Whereas the carbon that you are distributing is the carbon to drive your cars, and it's the carbon to make all the fancy things that we have, and it's the carbon that we use to heat our homes and stuff like that. Are you with me there? That's the carbon that they were distributing. Okay? So I want you to hold on to that. We're going to talk about it a little bit more in just a second. What I need for you to do right now is that I'd like you to take your name tags. Now, I don't know if you noticed when you got your name tags, but they were all in really nice, neat piles. I would like them to end up in those same nice piles. So if you want to send one person from your group up, since you all have the same tag, you're welcome to do that. Please leave all of the cards where they are. All of the white carbon goes in my orange basket. All of the black carbon goes in the basket that Jacob's got. Go. Here. Yes, I would like those tags. Thank you. And then you can go back to your regular seats. You can actually put them up there. That's fine. There's a pile of this stuff with a quick video to kind of give you a sense of some of the implications. Hold on just a second. I'm going to make sure my sound is on. Yeah. You do not have to. If you want to just use regular paper, you're welcome to do that. No, this isn't working. There it goes. All right. Shh. Take a look.
A banana and a chunk of coal both store carbon, yet they are as different as can be. The banana is sweet and delicious. Coal is not. Both were made by plants and store energy from the sun and carbon gas from the air. The carbon in the banana is young and fast, while carbon in the coal is old and slow. NASA launches satellites into Earth orbit to help us watch fast and slow carbon cycles. Higher amounts of carbon dioxide in the air are shown in yellow. Growing plants on land are shaded green. Plants use the sun's energy to remove carbon dioxide from the air to make biomass, such as the banana. Growing plants remove carbon dioxide from the air in spring and summer. In winter, all living things release carbon dioxide back into the air. Some carbon cycles quickly, moving through living things and returning to the atmosphere. Carbon in the banana is young, fast carbon. Just weeks ago, the banana was carbon gas in the air. And hours after you eat it, you breathe out the same carbon back into the air around you. Other carbon cycle slowly, getting buried underground or deep in the ocean. Plants took the coal carbon out of the air hundreds of millions of years ago, long before there were people. That carbon has been locked up ever since, and would stay locked up if we didn't dig it up and burn it. We use coal and other fossil fuels to power our lights and factories, heat our homes, and move around. When this old carbon is burned, we release carbon gas to the air, and can also release black carbon or soot, here shown in purple over the Earth at night, brightest where most carbon is released. Black carbon in the northern hemisphere comes mainly from coal and forest fires. In South America, Africa, and Indonesia, it comes from burning fields and forests that may have stored carbon for hundreds of years. The carbon cycle is balanced if carbon released into the air is the same as what's taken up by the ocean and land. But lately, people have been putting old, slow carbon into the air faster than nature can cycle it back into storage. Why do we care about the carbon cycle? Carbon dioxide acts like a blanket and traps heat leaving the Earth's surface. Too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere warms the Earth and leads to other changes, such as melting ice caps and rising sea level. Each of us has a carbon footprint, the amount of carbon we put into the air through the choices we make about food, transportation, and energy. Find out what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint today.
All right. So we will be talking more about that concept kind of throughout the rest of the year, which is exciting. But I just want to give it to you in that context, right? That's why it matters. You've probably heard from people, politicians, scientists, all of those things, right? The term carbon footprint. But I think it's nice the way that we saw it when Jacob and Hayden were distributing that carbon, right? There's only one place it goes. And it definitely does disrupt the cycle. So just kind of getting that into your head is an important way to understand what's going on. What I want to do for the rest of the period today, and maybe a little bit tomorrow too, we'll kind of see where we're at, is to write down some concrete notes about the carbon cycle. So you can use that green sheet. If you would rather write these on just regular paper, by all means, whatever makes you happy is totally fine. But I'm going to go ahead and use a copy of the green sheet to write on as well. Okay? So just some basic facts, some things that you should know or need to know. Most of these things, I think, are things that you've probably picked up, but again, kind of having it written down, concrete is helpful. So carbon is marked with the letter what? C. Okay? And I'm going to write it on these notes as C with a circle around it, just so that I don't get confused. Okay? And carbon, we've kind of talked about this, is an element. So you can find it on the periodic table, okay? It's an element that is required for life on Earth. Okay. As we said earlier today, when we were doing our capture task, wasn't really a question, but as we were doing that, we know that carbon is found in all 4 spheres of the Earth, okay? In some of those spheres, the carbon exists in living things, and in some spheres it exists in non-living things. A couple of words for that just so that you're aware of them. Living things are called biotic, and non-living things are called abiotic. Okay. Another place that you may have seen that or heard of that prefix is like symmetrical or asymmetrical is another one. A just means not in this case. All right. I'm trying to make sure that we can get through all of this. So I want to make sure you have this information in your capture question. So I don't want to go ahead and write that down again. Does that make sense? So just a little reminder that this was capture question. What was it? 5.9. So you can check that out when you're studying this week. So you've got it. All right. So the game is, and the important thing is that the carbon moves, right? The carbon moves. So an example, since you didn't have a chance to write down all of the things that we did during that activity, just so that you can kind of remember what was happening. One example is that you could have the atmosphere. I'm going to put it in a little cloud just so that I can keep track of where it is. There's the atmosphere. And the atmosphere, who was atmosphere? Just this last time we did it. Yeah. Was one of the things that you could give it to plants. Is that right? Trees. So we'll go ahead and draw ourselves a little tree. I feel like I need some color here. And how does the atmosphere give the tree carbon? What?
I don't remember. That was water.
I mean, there's a process by which the atmosphere gives the tree carbon, and the tree uses that carbon. It starts with a P. Yeah, through photosynthesis. photosynthesis. It's kind of a long word. Photosynthesis. And we've talked about it a little bit before, but just to have it written down so we don't forget, photosynthesis is basically when plants take carbon that's in the atmosphere, right? And they use it, they store it, okay? So the plants take carbon from the atmosphere and it's stored. And now, just to remind ourselves, that carbon is now part of the biosphere. Okay. Now trees, my tree friends, what could you do with the carbon?
Give it to rocks, caterpillars, and atoms.
Say that one more time.
Rocks, caterpillars, and atoms.
Okay, rocks, caterpillars, and atmosphere. So in order to give it to, I'm just going to do one at a time. I'm going to do atmosphere first just because it's right there. Do you remember the process by which we can give carbon from a plant to the atmosphere? It starts with an R. Respiration. Yep, respiration is when plants and animals too, okay, release carbon into the atmosphere. And that right there is a nice little carbon cycle, right? Atmosphere to biosphere, biosphere to atmosphere, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. We also said that it could be given to the caterpillars. I'm not going to draw a caterpillar there. That would just be like a little cycle, all in the biosphere, right? And then also, if that tree happened to fall down, sad, and eventually decay away, right? Okay. Through that decay and decomposition, the trees can then give carbon to the rock and the sediment, right? It releases carbon into the soil. Okay. And so that would be part of which sphere are we talking about now? Geosphere. Okay. And then just a friendly reminder that that decomposition could just result in then giving carbon back to something else that's growing, right? Or with through a lot of heat and pressure, it can create, that's supposed to be a tree, but it didn't really work. Okay, turned into fossil fuels. Okay. The plants and animals. All those things from the biosphere, okay, are buried and through heat and pressure. Okay. They turn into carbon, coal. Oops, I can't spell though, sorry. Try that again. Natural gas, oil, etc. Another example of pure carbon in its most pure form, squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, dead plants, dead animals, all that kind of stuff. Diamond. A diamond literally is just carbon that's been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed in a particular way so that the crystals are lined up, and it happens to be white and pretty and shiny. It's kind of funny that and a lump of coal are exactly the same thing. One's just worth a little bit more because it's shiny. It's weird, right? Like, yeah. I don't know. All right. How are we doing? We okay? All right, fantastic. We're going to keep going. Levels. So this thing, the piece that we want to know here, I'm just going to write down a couple of things. And like I said, we will come back to this a little bit tomorrow. But for right now, the thing that I want to make sure that you know, and we said this earlier after we did our second round, is the amount of carbon on the Earth the same as it was 5 million years ago or different? The same. It's not like we get carbon from anywhere, and it's not like we give it to, it's all the same. So that's really, really important to know. The Earth's carbon, what do I say? I'm changing that. Whoop, sorry. I changed the way I wanted to word that. The amount of carbon on Earth is always the same. It never, ever changes, okay? The thing that does change, and the thing that our humans kind of monkeyed with when we were doing that experiment, the thing that our humans messed with was that the location of the carbon can change. And we knew that even before, right? Okay. Hold on to this. Bring this one back. I would also strongly encourage you to work on the study guide tonight so that if you have questions, you can talk about them tomorrow. I can help you out tomorrow, okay? Have a fantastic day, you guys. Happy Monday. I mean, it was a Monday first period, right? So